All right, we'll begin. A tradition that we have is ringing this bell when we begin our session together. This is a purification bell. And so in some traditions, it would be purification against, like um, um, evil spirits or negative energy. And so we don't look at it that way. We look at it as purification of anything that we're carrying with us that might prevent us from being able to meditate and to let go of the things that are troubling us and that sort of thing. So it's an opportunity to check in with yourself and see, what am I carrying right now that I'd be better off letting go of. And so maybe everyone can just close your eyes for a moment and kind of think about that, what it is that we're carrying. Sometimes the things that we're carrying are some sort of a derivation of greed, for example. We feel like we need something, we feel like we're not getting enough of something or not getting our fair share. And so that can just create a little bit of a feeling of greed in the heart and mind, and that can be unsettling and cause us to feel some degree of suffering. Sometimes we feel intense aversion, which is a strong disliking for something, wanting to escape something or wanting to avoid something, prevent something from happening. And the third is that we can be confused. We can be unaware of these factors in our lives, and so that leads us into repeating them over and over. So this is not a moralistic purification, but it's just a becoming aware of what our states of mind are doing in regard to holding us up or setting us free. And so with that, I'll just invite you to think about those things that would be helpful to let go of. Think about those things that you'd like to cultivate in a positive way, whether it's love or compassion, equanimity, appreciative joy. And now I'll sound the bell. Let there be peace, let there be peace, let there be peace. Welcome, everybody. So if you would like to take a moment to get comfortable for the meditation, we'll all get in position and we'll begin the meditation practice, however you feel like doing that. And one thing I like to point out too is, just because you start in a certain way, it doesn't mean you have to finish that way. If you realize you're a little uncomfortable after a few minutes, feel free to change position, lay down, sit on a cushion, whatever. You don't have to stay, put. So try and eliminate any conflict in the body so that you can feel comfortable, and then you'll be able to work more with what's going on in the mind, which is where most of the work is done. So, all right. I will sound this bell in a moment, but just a few opening instructions. So, however you're sitting or laying, look for a degree of symmetry in your body so that both sides are about equally supporting your weight, and both sides, the muscles are equally utilized. So that symmetry. It's helpful to sit with your back straight, but not rigid or stiff in any way. And then it is helpful to tilt the chin forward ever so slightly, which will take just a little bit of tension off the back of the neck and the shoulders. So that's helpful. And then we close the eyes. The reason for closing the eyes is to eliminate the visual distractions. If we're looking around the room, we're seeing things, then we think about those things and start daydreaming. So closing the eyes helps us to concentrate at a greater level. And then finally, we let the breath just come and go however it wants to come and go. We don't manipulate it in any way. We just let it come and go as it needs to come and go. And if possible, breathe through the nose as opposed to the mouth. If you're congested, if you can't comfortably breathe through the nose, then feel free to breathe through your mouth, but breathing through your nose will be helpful as we go forward in the practice. So with that said, I will sound the bell. I'll invite you to follow it into silence, and then I'll start to guide us through the meditation. Just follow the sound of the bell into silence. Follow it as it becomes quiet. Let that silence and the quiet be an invitation to turn your senses inward. Become aware of the feelings of being present in your own body right now. So in doing this, we're letting go of the habit of the mind, which is to generally be projected outward to the outside world, to be engaged in that. So instead, we're focusing inward. And again, it just helps to check in with the feeling of being present in your own body. The feeling of sitting here, of laying here, of being present. We find that there is a natural stability available to us. We find that it is reliable to be present in the body and to look for peace here. So now, with all of our awareness focused inward and our sense of presence established, let's bring our awareness together up to the top of the head and to the area of the scalp. And then with your awareness in the scalp, simply open up to any physical sensations that you notice in the scalp. So you're just hanging out there for a moment in the scalp, any sensations. And the sensations often take the form of temperature sensations. It might feel a little warm to you or cool in your scalp. Sometimes there's a feeling of air movement in the room. You might feel that on the hair follicles or across the skin of your scalp. And then sometimes there are sensations on the surface of the skin. There can be a little tickle or an itch or a pulsation. And so really we're not here to evaluate or judge any of those sensations. We're just here to become aware of them in an objective way, not judging, just noticing what's here in this moment. And we notice that sensations arise and pass away, and they arise and pass away, always changing. As you're observing your scalp, if you notice any tension anywhere in the area of the scalp, you can just let that tension go. Just allow it to leave the body, and then observe the peacefulness that takes its place as you let that tension go. And a lot of us really do notice that there's tension in the scalp. So now from the scalp, we can bring our awareness downward into the forehead, into the temples, let it pass down through the eyebrows and into the eyes. So now we have these four parts of the body, and once again, we just bring awareness to them. A patient, attentive awareness, just observing, what do I feel? What are the sensations? Temperature, air movement, sensations on the surface of the skin. And as you're observing these sensations, you can only observe what is real in the present moment. You can't observe a sensation that's past. You can't observe a sensation that may come. You can only observe what is here and now. So just focus on that, the sensations of the present moment. And once again, take a look for tension anywhere in these areas. And you might notice that your brow is furrowed, or sometimes there can be a tightness in the temples. Sometimes there will be tightness in the eyes, a squinting, or the eyebrows might be raised. And so when we discover this tension, we just guide it out of the body. We give it unconditional release. We allow it to leave. And we find that it is very cooperative. When we recognize it and invite it to leave the body, it does. And it leaves us more peaceful, more grounded, more balanced. And so now from the temples, we can bring our awareness downward. See if you can feel the flow of awareness as we move it down into the ears. And sometimes you can feel that actual movement of awareness, soothing, warm flow. We bring it down into the ears. And now I'll begin to name some parts of the body and the face and guide us through. And so your only task as I name them is just to become aware of sensations objectively, and any tension you encounter, you release it unconditionally. So observe and release, observe and release. No judgment, nothing you need to do, nothing you need to avoid, just the experience of the present moment. So moving forward from the ears, we feel the awareness flowing through the cheekbones and into the face. And then we feel the awareness drifting downward from the eyes, passing through the nose and mouth and chin, observing the sensations in all of these areas. And then looking for tension. Is there tension in the jaws? Are your teeth clenched perhaps, or your lips are pursed? So any tension you find in these areas, again, you can release it. We often find that we hold tension in the same places habitually. And so as we do repeated meditation practices, we'll often find tension in the same place, existing in the same way. So this is helpful to uproot that tension and to let it leave the body. So now from the chin, we'll guide the awareness downward into the neck. And we'll focus our awareness on the throat, the front of the neck. Any sensations that are here, the sides of the neck and the back. Again, sensations of temperature, air movement, sensations on the surface of the skin. Not judging anything, remaining objective, just allowing everything to arise and pass away in your consciousness. Any tension you meet, you respond with complete letting go, release, unconditionally. And now from the neck, we can move our awareness downward. Again, see if you can feel the flow as awareness moves from the neck down into the shoulders. Spreading out through the shoulders, we're observing sensations again. And here in the shoulders, in addition to temperature, air movement, and sensations on the surface of the skin, we might notice a feeling of contact if we're leaning against a chair, or if we're laying down, we might feel that contact in the shoulders, or a feeling of bearing weight. And we may notice that there's tension in the shoulders. It's possible that they're shrugged in some way. So we let that go, just allow it to leave. And we become aware of the ever-increasing peacefulness of the body and mind as we move through. So now from the shoulders, we'll let the awareness drift downward through the upper arms, all the way down to the elbow joint. And here we observe sensations. And let's focus just for a moment on the front part of the arms or the biceps, noticing and releasing, and rotating inward, observing the inside part of the upper arms, rotating again to the back or to the triceps area of the upper arms. Again, just observing, letting go, remaining present, remaining objective, and then moving to the outer surface of the upper arms. Same process over and over. And then we'll feel awareness moving from the upper arms down through the elbow joints. Feel that warm awareness moving through, drifting down through the forearms. Feel it moving. As it moves, notice the sensations in the areas it's passing through. And just automatically let go of the tension. Feel the awareness moving downward through the wrists now. And then feel the awareness moving from the wrists into the hands. You can feel the heels of the hands and the palms. Sensations there. Moving to the tops of the hands. Different sensations there. Becoming aware of the thumbs and fingers. Then we bring our awareness all the way down to the fingertips and to the fingernails. And if you quietly observe, attentively observe the fingernails for a few moments, you may start to notice a very subtle feeling of energy, very subtle pulsation in the fingernails. Just observe. You are starting to focus your awareness to a sharper and sharper degree, becoming more and more aware of sensations in the body. So now here from the fingertips, we will move our awareness up to the top of the chest now. So we maintain a continuity of awareness as we move. And then you can spread your awareness across your collarbones and then let it start to descend downward through the chest. Passing downward all the way down to the base of the sternum. And then once awareness is in the sternum, allow it to flow outward through the rib cage. Again, still, your only task is to observe the sensations objectively and to let go of tension. And when I say observe the sensations objectively, really what I mean is you're not saying, well, this is a good sensation, this is a bad one, this one I want to get rid of. It's more of an objective awareness of what is happening in the present moment. And at the same time, just accepting it as the reality of what is happening right now. Just being fully aware. And we find that expands our awareness and our consciousness rather than constricting it. So moving now from the rib cage, we'll bring our awareness up to the underarms. And from the underarms, allow the awareness to flow downward through the sides of the body, all the way down to the waist. Remember just observing those sensations and immediately releasing tension. The second you notice it's there, you respond by letting go. And you feel the peace as it settles into your body. And with awareness in your waist now, we'll bring it forward into the belly. And as you breathe, notice the rising and falling of the belly with the breath. Notice the expanding and contracting of the belly with the breath. Or you might notice a feeling of fullness in the belly. So we're just aware of the sensations, whatever they are. And if the belly's tight, let it go. Let it relax, let it hang out. Just allow yourself to be peaceful and free. And now from the belly, from the tummy, we'll bring our awareness around to the top of the back, starting at the base of the neck. And we'll start to move the awareness down through the shoulder blades, through the upper third of the back. And here as we observe, once again, noticing sensations, letting tension go. And we can let that awareness flow downward a bit to fill up the middle third of the back with awareness. Noticing the sensations, letting tension go. You know, one thing that many of us experience is when we get to the back, that's a part for many of us where there's some fatigue or some pain or some discomfort. And when we encounter discomfort as we're moving through in meditation, we find that it can be difficult to just allow the sensations to be objectively, just letting them come and go. We find that often we develop a little aversion toward those unpleasant sensations. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to bring your awareness to that process that's going on and to open up your awareness to become more and more expansive. Noticing that these unpleasant sensations in the body that occur from time to time are a very small part of our overall consciousness, and that our awareness is large enough to contain any reality without it being a problem. So just allow those sensations, any difficult sensations, allow them to be just as they are, without pushing against them, without hating them. Just let them be. Continue to observe. See if you can let go of tension. And then we'll move down into the lower back, and we just repeat that same process. When we find unpleasant sensations, we develop aversion toward them almost immediately, and the aversion is the thing that causes us to suffer. Because now we've got this thing that we don't want, we've got ideas about what we do want, and that dynamic alone is enough to cause greater suffering in the mind and body. So we accept everything just as it is in this moment. Now from the lower back, we can move our awareness further down. Feel it as it moves into the sit bones. Feel it as it passes through the hips. And then feeling as it moves a little further, spreading through the pelvis. Any sensations you notice, release any tension, just set yourself free. And then now we'll move awareness from the pelvis and the hips, we'll move it down into the thighs. And we'll focus on the different parts of the thighs since they're larger muscle groups. So beginning with the top surface of the thigh, the upper surface of the thigh, we become aware of the sensations that are there, and we let go of the tension. And then we rotate outward, become aware of the outward facing surface of the thigh. We release the tension, we observe the sensations objectively. Then we move to the underside of the thighs, following that same two-step process. And then finally to the inside part of the thighs, from the tops all the way down to the knee joints, observing and releasing. And then feeling that warm flow of awareness as it passes through the knee joints. And it starts to work its way down You feel awareness passing through the calves. You're aware of the sensations. You're letting tension go. And you're aware of awareness moving through the shins now. Then it's moving downward further into the ankles. And then once it's here in the ankles, it begins to move into the feet. We might notice the heels, the soles of the feet, the balls of the feet, the sensations associated with each of those. Moving to the tops of the feet, and then to the toes. And then once again, we'll focus on the toenails. Just focus on this very small part of the body, the toenails. Are there any sensations there to be noticed? And sometimes there are, and sometimes there are not, and it's okay either way. We're just bringing awareness here. And what most folks find is if they don't find any sensations on the first try, that in subsequent practices and subsequent meditations, they will start to become aware of these more subtle sensations. So now from the toes, from the toenails, once again, we're going to move our awareness up to the top of the head and to the area of the scalp. But this time, at your own pace, you can start to guide your awareness back down through your body. So you can do it slowly if you like, or you can do it quickly. But oftentimes we find that with just one inhalation, we can become aware of the sensations in a part of the body. And then with the subsequent exhalation, we can let go of the tension in that part of the body. So we can use the breath as a tool. Breathing in, I'm aware of sensation. Breathing out, I'm releasing tension. And just working through the body slowly, part by part. And I usually recommend following the same path over and over, the same that we followed, just so you get into a pattern of making sure each part of the body has been observed, each part of the body has been included in the practice. As you're moving your awareness back down through your body, notice the places where tension has returned. There's always a few places where you let the tension go a few minutes ago, and now, lo and behold, there's tension there again. So you might have let your jaws relax, and now you find that they're clenched again. Or that your shoulders were loose, and now they're shrugged, or the belly is tight. These are all very important observations. As we go through the course of our day, we are bound to experience things that are stressful or challenging, or things that make us mad or hurt our feelings. And what we do as a response to those difficult emotions and difficult situations is we tighten up the body. We hold tension as a way of protecting ourselves. And so what we find is that even though we may have forgotten about the issue that caused the tension in the belly or in the shoulders or the jaws, that because of the habit of repeating this, that it kind of replays the difficult emotions that caused the tension in the first place. So by finding the tension, by letting it leave the body, we find ourselves more and more at peace, more contented, just a very pleasant sensation of being. So now, once you've had a chance to move your awareness all the way through your body and to identify those places of habitual tension and let them go again, now we'll just bring our awareness together up to the base of the nose, into the little patch of skin there beneath the nostrils and above the upper lip. And for a few moments, just focus awareness there. Breathing in, be aware that you're breathing in. And breathing out, be aware that you're breathing out. It's just a very light, very gentle awareness touching each breath. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Try to stay with the full duration of each breath as it comes and goes. So staying with the in-breath as it begins, then it starts to slow and pause and reverse direction. You stay with the whole out-breath. Just repeat that process, being present, being fully attentive. As you observe the movement of the breath, you can open up awareness to the touch of the breath. Anywhere in this triangular area of the nose, you've got the little patch of skin beneath the nostrils, you've got the rings of the nostrils, and then the nasal passages. So with awareness focused here, you're aware of the touch of the breath as it moves in and out. And then you can become aware of the sensations within that touch. Breathing in through the nose, the air feels a little drier. And when you breathe out through the nose, it feels a little more moist. Breathing in through the nose, the air feels a little cooler. And breathing out through the nose, the air feels a little warmer. So we're just opening up awareness, observing whatever is happening in the body, being aware, letting go. Sometimes as we're observing the breath in this way, focused on the triangular area of the nose, we've been meditating now for about 20 minutes, and sometimes distractions will start to come up. Very natural. We get a little restless, sort of looking for something new to happen. We find that, maybe we're distracted by sounds in the room or on the street outside. And so the mind leaves the triangular area of the nose and goes to investigate the sound. In the very moment that you realize this has happened, the only thing you need to do is return awareness to the breath. And just start again anew, focus once again, and just follow the breath. And then if you have to do it again on the next breath, if you have to let go of thoughts, that's fine. Just keep returning to the breath. Sometimes we'll be distracted by sensations in the body, tickles, itches, fatigue. In the same way, just become aware of that moment at which awareness moves away from the breath and it moves to the sensations, and just invite it back. Come on back to the breath. Once again, just observe the breath, the movement of the breath, the touch of the breath, sensations of the breath, and you'll find that those distractions go away all by themselves. And finally, sometimes the mind itself will be the distractor. It will be lost in thought or daydreaming or planning. And so again, when we become aware of this, it's a wonderful moment. We can return our awareness to the breath. We can let go of the distraction, and we continue to strengthen our practice. So the plan now is to just follow the breath in silence together for just a few minutes. And then I'll sound the bell to end the meditation practice. So just stay with the nose, and anytime a distraction comes up, make note of it, and then let it go to return awareness to the nose. And do that, and then the next time a distraction comes up, just do the same thing. Be patient and be compassionate. So let's just share a few minutes together right now, and then I'll sound the bell. So take your time coming out of meditation. Just kind of slowly get back into your body. Move around a little bit if you want to. Feel free to stand or stretch. There is tea in the kitchen. If anybody would like some tea, there's an air pot and cups and all kinds of tea. Feel free to go get some and enjoy that while we do our talk. So it seemed like a very good, very quiet meditation.
Yeah. That from last week?
Yeah, and I only got a little ways into it, so we'll be doing it again this week.
That's for this week. Oh, I'm the teacher's pet, so I get to do this.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I gotta stand up.
And then in case you didn't notice, the restroom is it's in the entry area out there, so there's a restroom there. So
You should get a cup of tea.
I know.
might help.
I didn't cough. I'm cured.
I
It's
know.
a miracle.
I know it, I noticed that.
You know.
You didn't cough at all.
Last night I was, well, I'd only had about 2.5 hours the night before. And I'd gone to the doctor and I had gotten some medicine. I slept till 9 o'clock this morning. It was just like, oh, I got
Wow.
to sleep.
Don't do that very often, I bet.
No,
huh?
well, I had, the bronchitis and I couldn't lay down. And I tried sleeping sitting up, but it
That doesn't
didn't
work.
work. And I just was hacking
Yeah.
all night. I mean, really hacking.
It seems to me that it starts with Thanksgiving. You find, you get everybody together, and then it kind of
Yeah.
lasts for a little while.
Or when if you're teaching, some kid coughs in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look at all the people you're around in
Yeah,
the store.
somebody came to work sick, and the manager tried to say, you should probably go home. Oh, no, I'll be okay. And I was just like, I'm gonna kill her. Because I know I'm gonna get this.
Yeah.
I'm real susceptible, because
Mm-hmm.
so I went to the doctor yesterday, and they x-rayed my lungs to make sure it didn't, no, you just got bronchitis.
That's an interesting thing about Japanese culture, is that they're very big on not going to work, not exposing other people
Yeah.
to if they have a cold or a flu. And a lot of times you'll see them wearing,
Yeah,
the
they're
face
wearing
masks.
those masks.
Yeah, they just wear them in the train or the subway, and so it's more of a courtesy thing, not
China,
to.
they wear them so they can breathe.
Yeah,
Smog.
little different there, a little different there. So,
So if I get a cold now, I'll know who it came from. No.
So I got this scoliosis,
Yeah.
crazy thing.
well, last week I shared this story last week, but it's kind of a neat one, and so I think I'll share it again. It's kind of a funny story.
Should I turn on the light here?
Yeah, whatever you'd
Oh,
like to
yeah.
do with
Oh, wow, that
like
makes
to
a
do with
difference.
lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, big difference. So, this was a quote by Joseph Goldstein, who's a wonderful teacher. He's got a few books and quite a bit of material on the web that's available. But he, like a lot of teachers, did a period of time in a monastic setting and was a monk.
Goldstein, that's kind of funny, not like Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah,
Goldstein.
yeah, a little different. Joseph Goldstein. So, and this is a neat guy. There's a lot of YouTube videos of him, and he's kind of got this neat East Coast accent, and just got a real nice approach. But so here's the story. He says in India, and now this was when he was living as a monk for a period of time. He says, in India, I was living in a little hut, about 6 feet by 7 feet. It had a canvas flap instead of a door. I was sitting on my bed meditating, and a cat wandered in and plopped down on my lap. I took the cat and tossed it out the door. 10 seconds later, it was back on my lap. We got into a sort of dance, this cat and I. I tossed it out because I was trying to meditate, to get enlightened, but the cat kept returning. I was getting more and more irritated and more annoyed with the persistence of the cat. And finally, after about a half hour of this coming in and tossing out, I had to surrender. There was nothing else to do. There was no way to block off the door. I sat there, the cat came back in and it got on my lap, but I did not do anything. I just let go. 30 seconds later, the cat got up and walked out. So you see, our teachers come in many forms. So, Joseph Goldstein, kind of a neat story. So, last week we started on this teaching, Proliferation Mental and Conceptual. It sounds kind of heavy, but it's fairly intuitive as we go through it. And we got through about the first page and a half, and so I guess what I'd like to do is to just read through that first page and a half, just so everybody's up on the same page, and this will be helpful review for those of us who were here last week. So just reading from the text, for a person who doesn't practice mindfulness, and for many of us who do, the process of mental proliferation runs on autopilot, non-stop, often in the background of consciousness. The Pali word for this mental and conceptual proliferation is papancha. The insidious thing about papancha is that it self-perpetuates. Papancha generates its own fuel, and so it can run indefinitely. Papancha, or mental proliferation, is the process by which much of our suffering arises. Now, we use the word suffering. We could also use the word unhappiness. We could use the word frustration or dis-ease or anxiety. Suffering is kind of the word that captures all of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean a real intense type of suffering. So we know part of our teaching tells us that attachment is at the root of all unhappiness, of dukkha. Dukkha is this word for suffering. Attachment, well, here's some examples. Not getting what you want results in unhappiness. Losing what you want to keep results in unhappiness. Getting what you don't want results in unhappiness. Worrying about the future results in unhappiness. Regretting or longing for the past results in unhappiness. Wanting the present moment to be other than it is results in unhappiness, or dissatisfaction, or dis-ease, or agitation, or unhappiness, or anguish, or suffering, or any other word that fits. So we're just starting to notice that it's our relationship with what is going on in the world around us that's starting to cause us to feel uptight and to feel tense and to suffer. So we've all had these experiences, but just kind of realizing that, yeah, behind all of that is there's me wanting something to be different than it is, and that is the genesis of the suffering. So we'll look at how attachment arises in the mind through this mental proliferation, or papancha. So at the bottom of page 1, I've got from the Mahupindika Sutta, that translates as the Honeyball Sutta. Now this is an old story, and I'm going to read you kind of the introduction part of it. The first few verses before we get into what's written towards the bottom of page 1 there. So this starts out that on one occasion, now this is a story about the historical Buddha, so just the guy that came up with the system that we now use. So thus I've heard, on one occasion, the Buddha was living in the Sakyan country at Kapilavatthu in Nigroda's park. By the way, Buddha is not a name, but Buddha is a title. that any of us could also receive, but it's a title that means one who is awake or one who is enlightened. So that's really what that means when we hear that. So it's not the name of a god or a deity, it's the name of an individual who achieved this level of self-mastery and self-awareness so that he was permanently awake and in that way free from suffering. So to continue, then when it was morning, the Buddha, he was dressed and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went into Kapilavatthu for alms. And when he had wandered around for alms, he was essentially begging for his breakfast meal. He returned from his alms round, and after his meal, he went into the woods for the day's abiding. So he was just going into the wood to meditate for the day. And entering the great wood, he sat down at the root of a bilva sapling for the day's abiding. And then there was this individual who came up named Dandapani, and he was from the Sakyan tribe. Dandapani, that's a Pali word that means stick in hand. And so Dandapani, according to kind of the history of this, he was a younger man. He was in his 30s, but he was quite wealthy, and so he carried this golden kind of cane around with him to sort of flaunt his wealth. And so he was kind of maybe narcissistic a little bit. And so he came to, while he was wandering and walking through the woods for exercise, he went to that same tree where the Buddha was sitting and exchanged greetings with him. And when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he stood at one side, leaning on his stick, and he asked the Buddha, "What does the recluse assert? What does he proclaim?" And then that takes us to the bottom of page 4, or page 1, I'm sorry, to number 4. And this is when the Buddha said, "Friend, I teach in such a way that one does not quarrel with anyone in the world. No perceptions underlie someone who is free of craving." Now, craving is another word for that attachment, the always wanting for something to be different than it is, and that's the thing that kind of puts us in this perpetual state of dis-ease. So Dandapani was kind of challenging the Buddha here to see if he could kind of get him to bite on this, and the Buddha's response was pretty clever, just saying, "The way I teach is we don't quarrel with anyone in the world. No perceptions underlie someone who is free of craving, free of attachment." So then from there, and this was just kind of the funny part. After the Buddha said this to Dandapani, it says here in the history of this, he said, "When this was said, Dandapani the Sakyan shook his head, wagged his tongue, raised his eyebrows until his forehead was puckered in 3 lines, then he departed leaning on his stick." So he was pretty disgusted by that exchange. So it was just kind of funny. I picture this flamboyant character doing this. So at the top of page 3, I have what is called the 5 aggregates. What the 5 aggregates are is they're really a process that every human goes through kind of on a repetitive basis that produces our experience of reality. And so the first one is form. So that's just physical form. Anything you can see or touch or taste or smell, that's form. The next one is consciousness or cognition. If you become aware of a form with your consciousness, you become aware of it through one of your sense faculties. So that's either eyes or ears or nose or mouth for taste or touch for tangibles. So these are the ways that we can experience those forms. So form leads to consciousness or cognition. Then there's a feeling that comes along with that. When I feel this big bowl, there's a feeling of it's a little cold, it's a little chilly. And because I'm a little chilly too, maybe that's not a real pleasant feeling. If it was a hot day and my hands were hot, maybe I'd feel this and the cool metal would feel kind of soothing. So once we're conscious of something through whatever sense faculty that is, there's a feeling. It can be pleasant, it can be unpleasant, and quite often it's just neutral. As you look around in here, you see the walls, they're pretty basic. You probably have a fairly neutral impression. There's nothing significant. So a lot of the things we see are just neutral. So it creates this feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. After that, there is perception. And perception, you could also use the word recognition. When we see something, we make contact with our eyes, and so your perception tells you that's a big bowl, or it's a meditation bell, or something like that. So that's the next part of the process. And then after perception, there's a reaction. Some sort of a reaction in the mind and the body. And so it's both physical and mental. So you might see that bell, and maybe you really like the sound of them. You've heard those before. They sound soothing. They sound, they just kind of have a beautiful tone to them. And so maybe your reaction is, oh, that's a meditation bell, and I feel peaceful when I meditate, and I like the sound of them. So that might be a reaction. Or you might see something that you find kind of unpleasant or distasteful, or something that you don't like, and so your reaction to it is a negative reaction. So that's just a little preface to where we go next with this. So now I'm on page 2, and I'm on number 16 there. Dependent on the I and forms, I consciousness arises. Okay, so this is kind of what I was explaining. The I, the form, there's I consciousness. The meeting of the three is contact. That's what they call contact. So I, form, I consciousness arises. That's called contact. We've made contact with something. With contact as condition, there is feeling, right? So I see that, I've made contact with the bowl, and there's feeling. So that feeling is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral based on my conditioning, what I think about the bowl, etc., etc. So with contact as condition, there is feeling. What one feels, that one perceives. So you have the feeling of this bowl, and now your perception kicks in. It's identifying this. Oh, it's a bowl, it's a meditation bowl. Anything you look at, oh, that's a jar of water. You look at that looks like a phone. So what one feels, what one makes contact with through one of the senses, that one perceives, identifies. And then that one thinks about. What one perceives, that one thinks about. What one thinks about, that one mentally proliferates. With what one has mentally proliferated as the source, perceptions and notions born of mental proliferation beset a person. So they plague a person. They they haunt a person with respect to past, future, and present forms cognizable through the eye. So we just use the eye here as the example in this case. So just a little talk about mental proliferation. We all do this, and most of us probably don't notice it. So it can be, you're sitting here, you look at the bell, you think, oh, that's a nice bell. I'd like to have a meditation bell like that in my meditation space at my home. I wonder how much those big ones are. I imagine they're pretty expensive. I do have probably a good tax refund coming up, and maybe I'd be able to afford it.
Wish.
Yeah, but I'm not entirely sure, and I don't know. That's mental proliferation. It's just kind of you're stacking one story on another, on another, on another, and it just kind of goes on and on. And it's oftentimes it's innocent enough, but sometimes we have that same experience where that mental proliferation is quite negative. Or I might think to myself, oh yeah, I had this disagreement with this other person, and I feel really bad about that, and I said some harsh words, and now I regret that, and but you know, I think this person really did me wrong, and so I'm, you know, maybe I'm justified in the way that I acted. Yeah, just on and on. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll start to imagine dialogue. So we'll think, okay, I said this to this person, and then this person said this to me, and then I said this to them. And sometimes, you know, you feel like your heart starts to pound harder, you feel like you're tightening up, like your blood pressure is increasing. It's almost like this is a real dialogue, you know? But so this is what papancha is, this mental proliferation. So it's this thing that all of us do, sometimes harmless, sometimes just kind of random daydreaming, but many times something difficult that kind of makes us feel stressed or upset in some way. So we go on, about the middle of page 2. Dependent on the ear and sounds, dependent on the nose and odors, dependent on the tongue and flavors, dependent on the body and tangibles, dependent on the mind and mind objects, mind consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there is feeling. What one feels, that one perceives. What one perceives, that one thinks about. What one thinks about, that one mentally proliferates. With what one has mentally proliferated as the source, perceptions and notions born of mental proliferation beset a person with regard to past, future, and present mind objects cognizable through the mind. So essentially this was a repeat of the previous paragraph, but it was using the other senses and mentioning those as well. And then one thing to point out here, it's talking about conventional senses, the eyes and sight, the ears and sound, the nose and smells, the tongue and mouth as taste, and then the body and the skin as being aware of tangibles. And to this it adds one more thing, which is the mind. And so the mind, in this context, the mind is considered a sense because we can imagine something and then we pretty much have that same experience as if it was really there, you know? So we could imagine eating an orange, and if we really imagine that, we can probably even smell it a little bit, and we can kind of imagine the feeling when we put it in on our tongue and we bite, and you know, and so your mouth might even water, and then you feel the puckering. And so this is why they consider the mind a sense. So it's because it's something that you can really experience things with. So now to 17. When there is the I, a form, and I consciousness, it is possible to point out the manifestation of contact. So this is where we really start getting into the meat of this. How do we take this fairly autopilot process that's been taking place within us all this time? How do we take this and start to use it to get free from the stuff that has beset us or is plaguing us? So what it's saying is, when there is I, the I and a form, and I consciousness, it is possible to point out the manifestation of contact. When there is the manifestation of contact, it is possible to point out the manifestation of feeling. When there is the manifestation of feeling, it is possible to point out the manifestation of perception. When there is the manifestation of perception, it is possible to point out the manifestation of thinking. When there is the manifestation of thinking, it is possible to point out the manifestation of besetment by perceptions and notions born of mental proliferation. So this is really interesting. What it is saying is that all of this goes on all the time, but if we become mindfully aware of that process, it's like suddenly we're becoming objective as an observer, and we're no longer beset by it, right? We're observing it objectively, and so you can actually go through the process. Hey, I just saw this bowl. And when I saw it, I made eye contact with it, or I touched it. I became conscious of it. It aroused certain feelings in me, pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. Those feelings, I had perception based on that. I started telling myself stories about what it is and what my relationship is to it. I want it, I don't want it, I like it, I dislike it, all that kind of a thing. So what this is saying is, since this process takes place, the way not to be swept away by it is to observe the actual process taking place. And then you're seeing it happening. And so that's really where the freedom comes from, is because all of a sudden, rather than being caught up in the drama and the story, you are observing it almost like a scientist observes things in an experiment, and so you're not affected by them in the same way. So then to 18, when there is no I, no form, and no I consciousness, it is not possible to point out the manifestation of contact. So this is a real easy one for us, because when we meditate, we close our eyes, and right when our eyes are closed, we're not seeing things around the room that we would then cognize, and then we would feel, and then we would perceive, and then we would react to. So we see that just in the simple act of closing our eyes, that we eliminate that entire range of sensory experience. And so there is one of the advantages of meditation. Because we sit, we close the eyes, that's been eliminated. When you hold still in your body for a while, after a while, you start to not really feel a lot of it. You know, if your hands haven't moved for 15 minutes, you're sort of just not aware of your hands being there. You're not aware of the contact between your hands and your knees. So as we get deeper and deeper into meditation, it's almost like we're starting to isolate off all of these different sensory experiences, and we're noticing what's happening, how we're reacting to them as we're going through them. So hopefully everybody's tracking with me and that makes sense. When there is no ear, so we used again I as kind of the main one to start off with and talk about fully. So, but here it's saying, so this is also true when there is no ear, no sound, and no ear consciousness. And when there's no tongue, or no nose, no odor, and no nose consciousness. When there's no tongue, no flavor, and no tongue consciousness. When there's no body, no tangible, and no body consciousness. And it's not saying no body like your body vanished. It's just saying that that is no longer being used as like, you know, a form of making contact, because you're still and you're motionless, or you're not, you know, you're not smelling something. So there's no reactions taking place. And when there's no mind, meaning no thought, there's no mind object, nothing to think about, so there's no mind consciousness, and so then it's not possible to point out the manifestation of besetment by perceptions and notions born of mental proliferation. So this is this really cool thing. We become aware of how these, how this process of the five aggregates takes place: form, consciousness or cognition, feeling, perception, reaction. All of that takes place utilizing the five conventional senses of the body, and the sixth sense being the mind and the imagination. And so this is what's happening, and this is where papancha and mental proliferation springs forth, and we start to create these elaborate worlds, you know, just out of our minds, imagining all of these things, and a lot of them cause us to suffer greatly. You know, thinking about the worst thing that could happen, or thinking about, boy, what if this person I love gets sick, or what if, you know, what if I lose my job and my income? I mean, you know, so much of this stuff is negative that we think about. So being aware of it, it's like, hey, what was it that I saw that triggered that? And if I eliminated that thing, you know, what's the process that took place after that? And so it's like we're seeing It's like you're seeing behind the curtain on The Wizard of Oz. All of a sudden you're realizing, oh yeah, this is not real. I mean, this is my imagination in many ways. So, 19, this is the process through which perceptions and notions born of mental proliferation beset a person. And if nothing is found there to either delight in or to welcome or to hold on to or to have aversion toward, if there's nothing there, then this is the end of the underlying tendency for craving or attachment, the thing that causes us to suffer. And it's the end of the underlying tendency toward aversion, of the underlying tendency toward views. Views meaning like preconceived notions about people or organizations or groups. Super easy for all of us to kind of grasp that in the political climate that we now live in. It's pretty easy to say, oh yeah, I just have set views about this politician or this party or whatever it is. We kind of have the set views. So it's possible to look at those and also see that creates an underlying tendency towards suffering through this papancha, through this mental proliferation. So on page 4, then it gets a little flowery with the language, but it's still cool. It says, this is the end of resorting to weapons of quarrels, brawls, disputes, recrimination, malicious words, and false speech. Here, these unwholesome states cease without remainder. And while that sounds a little flowery, I can just tell you in my own life, it is absolutely true. I mean, I wasn't like a weapons person, but I was a person who would quarrel with others. I was a person who would have really big disputes and disagreements, and there would be recrimination, there would be malicious words and false speech, and this was back before I found this practice and realized this all out. And so to have that end is just incredible freedom. It's just incredible freedom that we have. And awareness is the thing that gets us there. Mindfulness, awareness. Sylvia Boorstein, wonderful meditation teacher and author, she says, when we see clearly, we act impeccably. And so what she means is that when we're seeing things not through the lens of what I want and don't want, what I hate and what I love, what's right and what's wrong, when we see things clearly, just as they are, our actions as a response to those things are impeccable. We do the right thing because we're not relying on some false view of reality to guide us through. There's a variety of mindfulness practices that we can use for working with conceptual proliferation or mental proliferation. I think it's helpful to have an ongoing general practice designed to work with conceptual proliferation at the root level, one that is designed to uproot afflictive emotions and destructive habit patterns. And that's really what our basic practice every week is we're becoming aware of sensations in our body, so that the first part of that practice is called samatha, which means calm abiding, and it helps us to find peace within our own bodies. Where so often there is conflict, we can find peace in our bodies. And when we do that, then we move to the breathing meditation portion of the practice, and there we start to focus the mind and sharpen it. And when the mind is focused and sharpened, we start to notice the times where the mind moves away from what it is we're trying to observe. So we'll notice all those distractions. Oh, I heard a noise, and that annoyed me. And so there is mental proliferation starting. I wish that sound hadn't happened. I'm trying to meditate quietly, and that disturbed me. That's mental proliferation. Leads to suffering. We feel a pain in the knee, and it's like, oh God, how much longer is this guy going to go on before he lets us move? And so there's more papancha, more mental proliferation. So our basic practice that we do together each week, that addresses this. But then there's also, sometimes we'll be in a situation, I call it an emergency situation. And I have shared this with this group before. Some of you may have been here for it, and some of you may not have. But there's a practice that's particularly helpful for, just say you're having a really difficult time with, whatever, with work, a coworker, a family member, a partner, a child, it could be anything. Sometimes we find that we'll just suddenly realize, wow, I'm really uptight. I was talking to a person yesterday who there were some things going on, and she said that she was started to have an anxiety attack as a result of all these things going on. And so this stop practice can be very helpful for those types of things where, your mind is running away from you, you're getting panicky, you're having anxiety. So this simple practice can help. So it's called stop. And so there's 4 aspects to this, and so there's 4 parts to the practice. The first one is that S is for stop, and this is really the moment in which you become aware of your negative reaction to something, right? Something bad happens and you start to get upset, but at some point you notice. It's like, okay, I'm getting caught up in this thing. I'm getting swept up by this negative thing. I'm getting angry. I feel myself doing it. So at some point you notice. Sometimes you notice right away. Some folks don't notice until after it's gone on a little bit. But with practice, it seems like more and more people notice sooner and sooner into it. So there's less time for damage to be done. So that first part is through our general mindful awareness of what's going on in our body and our mind. We notice that we've started, and so we say, okay, stop for a second. Just push the stop button for a second. And then we go to the next step, which is T, and that stands for take a deep breath, in and out. One of the things that happens whenever we're super stressed or anxious or panicky or angry or hurt is that the breath becomes irregular. You're no longer breathing in full breaths. You're no longer exhaling fully. So often we breathe toward the top part of the lungs and just kind of in the throat. So it's just real short breathing. And when we do that, we're actually increasing the level of anxiety and panic that we feel because we're not breathing fully. So what this is saying is take a deep breath. Maybe take 3 deep breaths. And use the breath as a way of centering and calming yourself. You can start to just become aware. I am breathing in. I'm feeling myself breathing in. I'm feeling myself breathing out. And with each big, deep in-breath and then with a full release of the out-breath, you start to release tension from the body. So breathing in, turn your awareness inward. Breathing out, let go of tension in the body. And then after your initial take a deep breath, then we kind of switch that to tend to the breath, which means keep that going. Keep your full breath coming and going. Maintain that. The next one is O, which is for observe objectively. So now what we want to do is see what is happening from the perspective of an objective witness. And sometimes I use the example of a doctor. Let's say you have a very painful injury. Maybe you broke your arm or you fell and broke your collarbone or something. Hurts like crazy. And so you're in tough shape. So you go into your doctor and you tell your doctor what happened. And so, your doctor doesn't freak out. She doesn't panic about it the way we do. She looks at it objectively. And that objectivity that she brings to it allows her to determine what is the real problem here. She can ask you, does this hurt? How does this feel? She'll examine things. So she brings this quality of objectivity to the examination, and that's what enables her to make the correct diagnosis. And so you can kind of use that same example on yourself as, okay, let me observe objectively what's happening in my mind and in my body right now. Not judging myself and saying, oh, there I go again freaking out, or, oh, this is bad, I shouldn't be doing this. Observe objectively. Just notice what's happening. Just be aware of what the process is from the perspective of an objective witness. And this allows you to release the personal attachment to I or me, which often gets in the way. So rather than thinking, oh, this is happening to me, this horrible bad thing is happening to me, and it's, I'm having this problem, look at it objectively, see it as impersonal, and try and keep it here. Meaning, don't engage with all of the should-haves and what-ifs. Instead, just be aware. This is what's happening in this moment. And we did a little practice with that with the body scan. There's sensations. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant. We're not fighting with them. We're just saying, oh, this is the reality of the body in the present moment. This is the way I feel right now in the present moment. So it is looking at it in this objective way. Another thing we can use is the technique called noting, which we do a lot and we use a lot in meditation, which means noting quite simply, if you were sitting in meditation and you started having thoughts, you might say, thinking, anger, jealousy. You're kind of naming the emotions that are coming up, so you're identifying them. In that way, you're paying attention to them, so there's no denial, but you're not injecting them with a bunch of emotional energy that'll end up being destructive. So noting is just this way of kind of, it's almost like you're watching cars drive by and you're saying, blue car, red car, white car. You're observing your emotions in the same way. Anger, jealousy, fear, you're with it, you're not diminishing it, you're honoring it, but you're remaining objective. And then the final one is P, and that stands for practice equanimity. So equanimity, what does that mean? It means having a balanced composure in your body and your mind, especially when things are difficult or challenging, or at times where normally there'd be a lot of emotional reaction going on that would maybe lead to more problems. So equanimity is, you can look at it as letting go of reactions. Just letting go. Return to peace. So it's an intention. You're saying, all right, I'm aware of all of these emotions that I have observed objectively. I'm understanding why these are arising based on this mental proliferation, this papancha. And so what I'm going to do now is rather than react to it, I'm going to move myself to a place of equanimity. I choose to let go of my negative destructive reactions to these difficult emotions. I'm going to sit here in this place of objective wisdom, and in that you find peace and stability, and in that you can start to make decisions that are going to solve the problems rather than make them worse. So the stop practice is very handy. It's, Don, I think I remember you mentioning that you've used that a few times over the years.
I like to stop.
Yeah, it's easy to remember, because it's short and there's, like 4 things to do. But if you do that, by the time you get down to the P and you go through that P part, it really has made a difference. I mean, you really do feel like you're calm and you're much better equipped to deal with things. So this one's been big for me too. I try and do this whenever there's, whenever I get bad news or whenever there's something that comes up, because it always does, So, we're close to the end of our time here, and so I want to end soon to be respectful. Any questions? Any questions or any thoughts? Or yeah, sure.
Well, on the front page,
Yes.
there's number 4, and I turn the page and it's 16,
Mhm.
17, what's the,
What I was doing was just kind of editing out a lot of the really long, sort of repetitive fluff.
oh,
So yeah, so like when I was reading about Dandapani and what he was doing, those were the things I left out. But I wanted to kind of make sure I had room in the handout for the stuff that was kind of, really digging into it. So yeah, thank you for asking that question. So that's where we're at. So I hope this is helpful because, for me and for, most of the people that I talk to about this, yeah, this is really kind of a daily thing that we deal with. And so to have some strategies, the mindfulness of it alone is kind of liberating. It's like, oh wow, yeah, I really do see that process. I see that process taking place. And it's like when you see that, it's kind of taking the mystery out of it. And so you don't feel like, you're no longer beset by it. So kind of a cool thing. So I hope this is helpful to you. And then I guess what I'd like to do is just end here in our last minute with a little practice that we do, which is called the 4 Brahma Viharas. There's 4 states of what are called the highest states of consciousness that a human being can have. And I really believe this is true. The first one is compassion. Compassion for ourselves and for other living beings. The second one is loving kindness, again for ourselves and for other beings. The third is what we call appreciative joy. For many of us, we derive joy from things that happen, positive things that happen, in a pretty tight circle around us. Ourselves, our partners, our families, our really close friends. When good things happen to them, we feel good about that. But we expand that circle through appreciative joy, and we start to see the experiences of other people who are, kind of maybe beyond our circle. We see good things happening to them, and we take those on as sources of joy for ourselves, So sometimes I do one with... there is an elderly couple that just about every day of the week they walk down Knowles together, they exercise. And it seems like whenever they're doing it, I happen to be down here doing something, and I just see it, and they hold hands, and it's like, well, hey, I don't know them, I don't know who they are, but I'm seeing this demonstration of love and caring. And so it's like, okay, that's, I take that as my joy. I see that. That's my joy. Or, see a video of a baby playing with a puppy, That's my joy. I get to keep that. That's mine. So, and then the last is equanimity, which again is just this peaceful balance of heart and mind, and this feeling that you're actually able to let go of all the stuff that is craving and aversion and all of these states of consciousness that cause you to be in conflict. Equanimity is letting go of all of those. So I'll just guide us through becoming aware of the suffering experienced by so many beings in this world, human beings, animals, all living beings experiencing suffering. We wish that all beings may be free from suffering and from the causes of suffering. And in addition, we wish that all beings could be surrounded by complete love and kindness. Love and kindness. And may all beings be truly joyful and happy. And may we expand our circle of joy and happiness to include others so that we feel joy witnessing their joy. And finally, may all beings be equanimous, free, peaceful, without attachment, just free, feeling good in their own bodies and hearts and minds. And then finally, may you sharing this place with me tonight. I'm so grateful to share this experience with you and to to sit before you. So I want to wish you, I want to thank you, and I want to wish you, may you be truly, truly happy. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you too for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice meeting you, and come again next Tuesday maybe, huh?
We actually have a third grader we're gonna bring with us tonight, cause it's family night, and I was like, oh, but I really wanna go to the meditation. I was like, do you wanna come with? But I didn't know enough about it to sell it hard enough, so.
Oh, sure.
Maybe she'll come next day.
Yeah, I think that's great. One of the things we're gonna do after the first of the year is, I've had a thing for a while that I've been working on called the Mindful Kids Initiative. And I've actually done some work up at Hillside with third graders up there, where we did, the snow globe, and we did, a few other things. And it's just ways of giving kids some simple strategies for kind of letting go of the stuff that might make them mad or fearful. And so the plan is, after the first of the year, probably like on a Saturday afternoon or something like that, that we would just have a class where a child, probably of elementary school age, and then an adult or two adults with that child, and then we'll do those things together and kind of teach like a family mindfulness practice for how to deal with conflict and anger and upset. So I'm really excited about that, because I think it's there's some great potential there.
For sure.
So that'll be happening.
There's a thing online, I don't know if it was Thich.com, but they showed them with little kids, teaching them to meditate, and they were saying it teaches little kids if they start getting stressed out or anxious about a test or
Yeah,
whatever, that they could do.
yeah.
And it was also a study or something that I read.
I was trying to think who, she's an actress, but anyway, Goldie Hawn.
Yeah, Goldie.
She does it with all the young kids in school.
Yeah, I know she's contributed a lot of money to a foundation.
Yeah.
She started the foundation, and then she's done this to try and teach it. But it's it's becoming more and more widely accepted as just as a very useful tool. That
Well, especially the way the schools are anymore with all the bullying and
yeah.
the stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really
Well,
sad.
holistic medicine too is getting more
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet. So.
oils and.
So I'm excited about it. But, just this weekly group that we do, even if it's the only meditation a person does all week, there's still a lot of benefit that comes from this. And, and then that's why we do a little talk at the end or after the meditation, is because theory and practice, my teacher always told me, theory and practice must come together. Because if you just do one or the other, either one is not fully optimized. So it's do the meditation, and then we talk about all this, and the meditation kind of makes it like, oh yeah, I see how all this is really taking place. So, but anyway, I hope to see everybody again next Tuesday.
Multiple choice test? No.
yeah,
No cheating.
absolutely. So yes, please come again next Tuesday. I'd love to see you, and we continue with the practice.